This is a tricky question in a tricky passage. There's a lot of subtlety to these words here, and so we got to be really careful. However, I do think that we can eliminate two answers pretty quickly with just a very quick cursory reading of this. We don't need a deep understanding of what's going on to eliminate choices B and D. The words board and other countries and war, these are very strong words that just really do not appear in the passage. So at the very least, you should be down to a 50-50 shot. And sometimes that's really good, because if you don't understand what you read, maybe when you're down to two choices and you really put them next to each other, you can compare them, see where they're different, and then go back to the lines and say, oh, do I notice either of these two things? It kind of lets your brain focus a little bit more on the stuff that matters as you read, because not everything matters in these lines. It's really just subtle points. So if we're down to A and C, we need to kind of understand the difference between the two kinds of businessmen that Seffens is talking about here. So he does talk about, the normal businessman. The kind of the beginning here, the typical businessman is a bad citizen, he is busy. So, okay, great. But we also talk about the big businessman, and then he goes on to say lots and lots of bad things about the big businessman. They're corrupt. They're ruining politics and ruining the country. But he's not as mean and critical of the typical businessman, and that is who this question is about. The typical businessman. Why does he get involved in politics? Well, it does say this at the end when we switch away from the big businessman back to the typical businessman. What does it say? When his neglect has permitted bad government to go so far that he can be stirred to action, he is unhappy and looks around for a cure that shall be quick, so that he may hurry back to the shop. So this is, again, the typical businessman. When does he get involved in politics? When government has become really, really bad. It is bad government to go so far that he can be stirred to action. So that matches with choice A, and that is the answer. The problems in government have become too big to ignore. The reason it is not C, even though that does kind of come up later, is that that's just not what they're explicitly saying here. It's not that he gets involved when a big businessman is running for office. It's that when the typical businessman does get involved, he tends to choose other businessmen for the government. So it's kind of a cause and effect thing. You have to make sure that the order is right here. They do talk about that, though, here, that he's choosing people who talk business when he votes. But the question of why he's voting, why he's involved in politics at all, is that government has gotten bad and he is stirred to action. These subtle things are difficult, but, like I said, if you can get rid of some bad choices right away, you have a much better chance of sorting through the kind of good choices and getting to that one right answer.